It's time for Windows Weekly, episode 173 today. Paul hates iTunes. Oracle loves Herd. And we'll answer your questions from the chat room. It's all coming up next with Windows Weekly.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for Windows Weekly is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com. This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott, episode 173, recorded September 9th, 2010, the Fiddly Bits. Windows Weekly is brought to you by GoToMeeting. Face-to-face meetings are sometimes important, but they can be a hassle and a waste of money. Do more, travel less with GoToMeeting. For your free 30-day trial, visit gotomeeting.com/Windows Weekly. It's time for Windows Weekly, episode 173, and here he is live from Fort Gay, Colorado.
No.
Mr. Paul Thurrott, editor-in-chief of the SuperSite for Windows at WinSuperSite.com. News editor for Windows IT Pro at WindowsITPro.com. Author of the incredible Windows 7 Secrets at Windows 7. Is there a URL for that?
No, it's just WinSuperSite.com/book.
That's good. And soon, the Windows Phone Secrets, which I'm excited because we now know the date, apparently, and I will ask you about that. But can you explain what you're doing in Fort Gay?
Fort Collins.
Oh, Fort Collins.
That's where I am. My company is based in Loveland, although they're moving to Fort Collins this year. And in fact, I'm up here for an editorial conference, but we're actually at the new office, which is beautiful. You know, the old office was so ugly we had to, we would meet people outside of the office so they didn't have to see it. So now the new one's nice, so I think that will come to a close. Okay,
because Fort Gay is apparently in West Virginia.
Yes, and unlike Microsoft, we know that.
What happened? Microsoft said there's no such thing?
I guess some guy used the name in his gamer tag on Xbox Live and he got banned because they said he was trying to be controversial.
But he was actually from...
yeah, so he contacted the support services they have and tried to get back online, and they refused to even look this up.
They didn't even go to Wikipedia, where you could find out that it's at 38 degrees, 7 minutes, 3 seconds north.
They could have typed this into Google and found it out instantly.
Instantly.
You know what I'm saying?
It's been around for 130 years.
Yeah. So anyway, they've
288,000 people live in Fort Gay. That's more than in Petaluma. They thought he was making... Yeah, they thought that he was making some joke about gay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, they apologized.
And did they reinstate him?
No, of course they did. Yeah. We're really sorry about
but still can't use that gamer tag.
Once you kill a gamer tag, it's just gone.
Now I'm wondering if the new Google... I should try the new Google search. Because, you know, if you get to a banned word...
Right.
As Irina Slutsky learned, if you start typing her name, it's just no results. Yes, she was actually great.
Well, they do that on purpose, right, for certain terms. I would be testing this myself, but my connection is so bad from here. I'm afraid to upset the delicate balance.
Don't upset the delicate balance.
To connect.
Fort G-A-Y. It went blank. So you can now say not only does Microsoft, or did Microsoft not know, apparently Google does not know either.
There you go.
You cannot search.
Well, you can search for it. You search for it.
I have to then hit return. I just the instant search blocks it out, as it does Irina Slutsky.
Now, who is that?
She is a reporter for Ad Age. She also does a video show. That's how I know her. And she was at the event, and she stood up and said, "Hey, you know, I tried searching for my name, and which is a very good common Russian name, Slutsky."
And did Eric Schmidt drive by in an ice cream truck and mock her?
Hey there. Hey, Irina. You don't exist.
know you're not in there.
Get the full body scan ready. Irina's here.
That's good stuff.
Oh. Well, you know the contention, and you probably, I don't know if you want to address this.
Go ahead.
You know the contention is that the reason this whole thing was created is that the guy who runs the consumer watchdog is in Microsoft's back pocket. And they even say that
Who said this?
Apparently, well, I'll find the links to you. But apparently, Edelman is who's also done other campaigns like this. Is serving the ad. I don't know if that's true.
I don't
it's
know.
It's on YouTube.
Okay. So
as well.
Edelman obviously is one of the companies that is contracted with Microsoft to do PR, but Edelman is not a. I mean, Edelman does PR for other companies too.
They've gotten in trouble for doing PR for other unsavory people besides Microsoft.
Wow. So
I'm just kidding. I'm teasing you.
Arguably, Edelman is in fact far more unsavory than Microsoft.
Oh, well, let's not get too involved in that. But yes, I see what
I could say that in 15 years of dealing with Microsoft PR, I've had some issues certainly with Edelman.
Yeah. Doesn't WagEd do the what is it? Because well, of course, a big company like Microsoft might have multiple PR agencies. Obviously, they
do have multiple PR agencies, and actually, the way it works is individual teams can determine who does their PR, and they will often have both companies come in and make a pitch and see which one they want to pick and so forth. But for whatever reason, Wagner Edstrom has the majority of the Microsoft accounts.
Right. And well, I think Pam Edstrom didn't Pam Edstrom come from Microsoft? And she used to work. Wasn't she their corporate PR, and then she started an agency, and as a result, I think still is beloved.
Yeah, I think her daughter,
somebody,
or it was somehow involved with. Actually, her daughter wrote a book about Microsoft.
Oh,
Pam, I can't remember her name.
Anyway.
Pam is the mother, right? I don't remember which was which.
Anyway, you want to talk a little bit about this Google Instant Search? I know it's not. It's an interesting story that I just saw is that Verizon on its new Android phones is bundling Bing.
Yeah, well, this has been coming for a long time. So Verizon had struck a deal with Microsoft, I think last year, where Bing was going to be the default search engine on all of their phones.
Right.
And I believe this is the reason that Microsoft created Bing, a Bing app for the Android phone, and it debuted first on Verizon phones, not surprisingly.
But apparently, somebody was reporting you can't install the Google search bar on these newer Verizon phones. I can do it on mine, but...
Oh, I see, yeah. Well, because they have an exclusive deal with Microsoft.
This must just frost Google.
if you want to talk about companies that are evil, I think starting with the wireless carriers would be an excellent place.
Yeah.
I mean, they make Microsoft or Google or anyone else you want to talk to like pikers by comparison.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, these guys are old school. They get it. They're evil. There's just no doubt about it.
Yeah. Do you like the new instant search? Does it work for you?
I don't know. So I have played with it and it works. Obviously, I mean, it's interesting when it doesn't work, but it works. I mean, I'm a little curious about what the long-term effects of this are going to be. There's this. There's one point of view where, just generally speaking, Google is making us dumb, because we don't have to know anything anymore. We can just Google it, and hopefully the search results are accurate, and hopefully that thing we click on first is the right thing, and so forth. I think there's a case to be made that, and I'm not saying that's true or not true. That's just something that I've read a lot about, or read a lot online. I've Googled for it, basically, and that's what I found. So the other half, though, is like, well, what happens when people now just look at that little list? You're not even going to look at the first page of search results anymore. I'll just look at those things that come up in the instant search, that drop-down box. It further constricts your research in a way, right? And hopefully those things are accurate, but when Google controls that, we don't know the math or magic behind that. It's kind of interesting. So I think it's something just to kind of pay attention to. I'm not really sure. I mean, I've always found Google to be pretty accurate, I guess, or pretty decent, with the search results. So I guess it's okay. But yeah, I'm just worried that, as I wrote in the notes, is this a further sign of the dumbing? Which
isn't that your next Stephen King novel, The Dumbing?
The Dumbing, yeah. All the irony there is intended. We of course chewed on this endlessly on our This Week in Google show, and if you want to hear an hour of people talking about the ramifications, but there are ramifications, SEO ramifications. Yes, that's the other aspect of it, the ads. Only the biggest and wealthiest companies can afford to be really high up in the search results list, for the paid parts of that, and there is a concern that really small companies are just going to get pushed out because they'll never be able to afford to be in that position.
Right.
So I mean, there are definitely some concerns here. But I think this was a reaction in many ways to heightened competition from Microsoft. I think even on, not like the Bing engine has them on the ropes or anything, but I mean, there are some very interesting features and innovative features in Bing. And you've seen Google, copy a couple of them here and there. And I think they're reacting in a way which is healthy for everybody. But this is interesting because I think from a functional standpoint, this really, I mean, aside from any of the side effects that may or may not be real, this is an interesting leapfrogging in capability, and it really puts them back in the forefront, I think.
Well, that's what they needed to do. But that's why we love competition, isn't it? That's why we celebrate it. If you don't get challenged, you don't grow. And so, it's good that Bing was there to say, hey. And I think it's also, I think it's interesting because Bing really was kind of going beyond search. And this is something everybody's talking about now. Give you answers, right?
Yeah, and that's a nice kind of a niche for them to go after, because when it comes to pure search, as I think this thing proves yet again,
you can't.
There's Google. Yeah. It's just Google.
Yeah.
Pure search is Google.
Yeah.
But Microsoft does do a good job with those vertical searches. Whether it's weather or music artists and so forth, or flight information or whatever it is. They actually do a very, very good job at that stuff. And I think the hope from Microsoft's standpoint is search is search. So, search just kind of works very similarly across the different engines, that if people would be attracted to the Bing engine because of these other things, healthcare, whatever it might be, that maybe they'll stick around and keep using the Bing search engine for everything. Google obviously approaches it from the other end, I think. Where it's just, pure search is the point, and everything else builds off of that. And, there's some sense to that as well.
Right. What do you think of this new Apple stuff? Speaking of competition.
Well, I'm on the edge here, and this is frustrating to me. I think, over the past few years doing the podcast together, when Apple comes out with these announcements, it's hard for me as a Windows user and as a proponent of Windows as a platform, because Apple is becoming very powerful and has always, has been very powerful in the digital media market, certainly for a long time now. And they really kind of treat Windows users very shabbily. One of the things that was really interesting to me is I wrote an article where I basically asked semi-rhetorically, is it time to just say no to these people? As Windows users, should we not be looking into solutions that are not as antagonistic toward us, that the software products that they make, I mean, Apple's hardware products, and I want to be very clear about this, whether you're talking about their computers or their devices, are almost universally excellent. I mean, they're just fantastic. There's something about Apple software, though, that's just, I don't know if they just don't know how to write Windows software, if they just don't care, if they do it on purpose. I half jokingly said, I have this feeling that there's this conspiracy that they're doing this on purpose, But then I got a lot of email from people who said, no, it sucks on the Mac OS X as well. iTunes does, that is. So,
it's way overdue. As you said last week, way overdue for a rewrite.
Way overdue. And you would hope with something like iTunes 10 that would be the point. If you look at what they did with QuickTime 10 and Snow Leopard, for example, a rethinking of that software and a nice new user interface, and maybe this would have been the time for iTunes 10. But it's not. It's the same old thing again. And it's what a lot of people had for years claimed Microsoft was doing with Windows, which is just piling crap on top of crap. And you get this kind of teetering infrastructure, and it's bulky and slow, and it barely starts up, and it can't get out of its own way. And I really feel that iTunes is just lousy software, and it's reaching like a tipping point, where despite the fact that those devices are so excellent, right? Especially the iPhone and the iPod Touch, I think, are the big ones as far as on the quality scale. But all of their devices are certainly well designed and beautiful to look at and so forth, and desirable, But
did you see the guy, the president of Acer, who said that Apple products are a virus?
Right. Yeah. Well, they're like a virus you want to get.
Well, but of course, remember, he makes competing products. He says eventually we will triumph, but right now the virus is consuming the body.
Yeah. Well, this is a very common thing. One of the things that came up. I'm here in Colorado for a work-related editorial conference. We had a couple of guys in from Microsoft, essentially, who talked about some interesting things, going on inside the software giant and their perspectives on different markets and so forth. And there is kind of a consensus in the PC world inside of Microsoft and with the various hardware partners like Acer that what's going to happen with things like the iPad or the iPhone is what happened with the Mac, that they'll enjoy this little moment in the sun, but that ultimately what's going to happen is they will simply influence the design of other products, and that these other products will take over those markets, and that they will go back to being a niche player. But I'm not so sure that's the case in some cases.
Well, the tablet is a very good example, where some would say, "Oh, Apple's just now owns this, and nobody can compete." But
that's one point of view.
I'm not sure I believe that, frankly. In fact, you might have said that 3 years ago with the iPhone. It did take people a couple of years, but they compete now.
So, but I think there are differences, and I don't think it's possible to look at the Mac and the PC market from 15 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever you want to look at, and say, look, that's going to happen again. I don't think that happens again. But I think if you have to take each market individually because they're all different. And I think if you look at something like the mobile market, that the iPhone is always going to have a big chunk of that.
Right.
The question is what percentage and what the other players are. I have opinions about that, not that they matter, but I think iPhone is always going to have a big chunk. Their infrastructure is so strong there that, they're just going to. I think that Android is going to surpass them, but that doesn't mean they beat them or win, or, that Apple is somehow relegated to some tiny percentage. I think that market's going to be divided up very differently than the PC market was.
There won't be 4 or 5%. They'll be 30 or 40 or 50%.
Yeah. And I think there will be 3 to 4 major players, all of whom have appreciable market share and have excellent businesses and great infrastructures and great ecosystems. And I think that's how that's going to go. But not that matters. If you want to look at the iPad, a lot of people, and I've questioned this myself, have said, well, when the netbook first came out, I mean, this was seen as sort of a new thing. It ran Linux. It was really low cost. It was a different thing. Microsoft didn't have a solution. And then, oh, look, a year later, netbooks were all Windows. Okay. So, yeah, all right, that did happen. But again, that doesn't mean it's going to happen on the iPad side. I personally think that in some ways it doesn't matter. I mean, the iPad is going to influence the design of computers going forward no matter what. And if the worst thing that happens to the iPad is that it has created a market where computers aren't just low cost, they're also simple. And I mean simple by design from the beginning, and are easy to use. And they have this App Store thing that, supports them on the back end, which I think is an important part of its success, then fantastic. I mean, so I think the iPad will always be there. I have less of an opinion about what that percentage is going to be or whatever. But, there are crazy iPad stories every single day, that iPads are going to eat into PC sales. iPads have already eaten into netbook sales, even though both of those things are just speculation, and are not provable. I guess we'll see. We'll see. Not that matters. But from the perspective of a Windows user, and this is something that I really feel needs to be repeated again and again. If Apple were to look out at its user base and look at all the people who own iPods and iPhones and iPads and Macs, right, that the biggest collection of those people also were running Windows, either on PCs or even on their Macs. That Windows users actually represent the biggest percentage of their users. And why they would treat these, I'm not saying treat us special, but I just feel like we're being treated pretty badly. But the problem is when you look at the alternatives, there is no single alternative that makes a lot of sense. Last year when the Zune HD came out, I had written an article after spending a lot of time with the device and the new services and everything, where I said, it's really neat, but, it doesn't have this, it doesn't have this, it doesn't have this. And now a year later, it's not so clear. There are comparisons you can make between iTunes and the Zune PC software, between the iTunes Store and the Zune Marketplace and so forth. And it's kind of plus or minus down the list. There's some things we need to see before we can say, like the new Apple TV. It seems like it's more of a Roku-style box now. And I'm not sure that that's such a great idea, I feel like something has been taken away there. I feel like Apple TV was underappreciated.
Right.
It was an excellent device, an excellent product, and now it's less, I think. I'm going to have to see it. I don't have one yet, so, we'll see.
I think it could be a stealth product too, though. I mean, we don't know exactly. For instance, somebody pointed out, well, yeah, there's no apps on the Apple TV, but what if you have an iPhone or an iPad and you've got apps on that? And he did mention that you can stream from the iPhone and the iPad. What's unknown is what can you stream? What if you could stream the content of those apps? Then you suddenly have Hulu on your Apple TV, and maybe they did do it. Maybe there is a backdoor, but so we just don't know until it arrives.
So we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
So,
but I am with you. Just to circle around to that iTunes thing, I'm really with you. It's crazy for Apple not to pay more attention to the Windows side. It's the vast majority of iTunes users.
Yeah.
But and again, to say that even on the Mac side, they really have dropped the ball, and we've criticized them on Mac Break Weekly over this. This is not a version 10. This is
it's like 9.2.3.
Right. What you did monochrome icons. You did a new way of doing album art, which are awful. You did a new way of doing album art, and you add Ping, which is a social network that doesn't network with any other social network.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
When
I was curious about this when it first launched, and I finally saw our number. You know, that thing launched with less than 50 artists.
Oh, it was terrible. I couldn't find anybody I liked.
Are you kidding me? You know, it's just like,
talk about a product as a hobby. Obviously, whoever did Ping didn't bother to let the record labels know.
Yeah, I mean, given how important, iTunes is the center of this entire teetering system that they have. The store is awesome. The content is amazing. The devices are fantastic. And it all centers around this unbelievable piece of crap.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just astonishing, you know?
You'd think they'd put more into that ecosystem. I mean, they're doing all right. Although, when you see 99-cent movie rentals or TV rentals, and then Amazon says, oh, well, we'll sell them for 99 cents. You got to wonder how fragile this ecosystem is. It's not like Google and their lock on search. Apple's lock on content just hasn't been challenged.
But the lock-in isn't, when Amazon went to 99-cent TV show purchases, I can assure you, nobody went running to Amazon.
Yeah, that might be.
And the reason is, it's not that simple. It's not
point
about
of access.
The cost of that one thing. Well, because the guy who's like, oh, look, Amazon just made purchases for 99 cents. Well, you know what? That guy has an iPhone.
Right.
He has a couple of iPods.
Right.
No, I mean, he doesn't. Who cares?
He doesn't care. Right.
It's just not enough. And the beauty of this Apple strategy is really the lock-in nature of it, because that stuff, a lot of that stuff is good, and it's important to point that out, because in all of the criticism that I've had of this, I want people to understand it's not clear cut. You can't. Going cold turkey from this is going to be very difficult for people. I asked in this article around this, is it time to just kind of say no to this stuff, for feedback, and I got it to the tunes of hundreds of emails, and it was one of those flashpoint things where I can't anymore. I can no longer respond to these.
enough. Yeah.
It's just too much. No, but I really appreciate it. I've read them all, and it's going to guide what I do going forward. But
was there a consensus?
So there were some interesting statistics, or some interesting generalizations, I could say. I was, and maybe this was because of the way I worded something, but I was interested to see how many people said to me, not that this is good advice for anyone who has Apple products today, but a surprising number of people said, the easiest way to get off of this stuff is to have never gotten onto it in the first place, and that's what I did. So there were those people, they weren't the majority, but I was surprised by how many people said that. The vast majority of people agreed completely that iTunes is a piece of crap, and that it's terrible. Every time a new one comes out, I keep hoping this is the one they fix everything, and they never do. But I have 3 iPod Touches and an iPad, or I have an iPhone and a whatever. And I bought an iPhone 3G when it first came out, and then the iPhone 4 came out, and I bought that. Now my wife has the iPhone 3G, and we purchased like $150 worth of apps. And it was, you get these emails where it's like, Apple at one point, went from protected AAC to AAC Plus, or whatever it's called, and I had to upgrade my music collection, and that cost me $125, and I did it. And it's like, these people are invested.
There used to be a website that would tell you how much you've spent, and it's something you don't want to know.
Oh, no, it's horrifying.
It's horrifying.
I don't want to pretend that this is easy, and I don't want to pretend that it's obvious. Like, here's the solution. Just go Zune, everything will be fine. It's not that simple. Everyone's needs differ. Some people couldn't care less about the apps on the iPhone. And for those people, life is going to be very simple. But for a lot of people, you know, there was a guy from Microsoft I was just talking to, and he, you know, he's had an iPhone for years, and now Windows Phone's coming down the pike, so he switched to Windows Phone like I have. And he says, I got to tell you, he goes, you know, we're in kind of a weird spot right now because the App Store hasn't opened up yet with anything other than demo apps. I know it's going to explode. I know it's going to be awesome, but that won't happen until October. And I'm dying without apps on it. You know, he really misses apps.
It's true.
And that's going to happen to anybody. I mean, that's even if you wanted to go to Android or Palm, WebOS or whatever, it doesn't matter. You know, there's an investment that has occurred here, and it's emotional, it's financial, and other things too. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. So I'm just asking the question, I guess, and I'm going to probe this a little bit. We've talked about this digital media course series I've been working on, and I've jump-started again, and I want to encompass things that make sense for Windows users, and you know, to many, I think, readers and listeners' chagrin, unfortunately, a lot of times that's going to be Apple stuff. I mean, there's just no way around it. It's hard. I mean, when I get home from this trip, all the iPods that just came out will have arrived at my house, and I will review them. And I bet that by and large they're going to be fantastic.
Don't
and
you
it's
hate
hard
that?
because iTunes sucks. You know, so it's a tough thing. It'd be nice to just have a nice, simple recommendation across the board, but it's just not possible.
Anybody who watches Apple closely, and we won't talk anymore about Apple in a second, but anybody who watches Apple closely, as we do on the Mac Break Weekly show, realizes pretty quickly that Apple seems to have either limited attention span or limited resources. Microsoft has this problem somewhat.
Which is amazing, right? Because they are a huge company.
They shouldn't have this problem, but Google has it. Yahoo has it. It's apparently endemic in the tech industry where, for instance, people were talking about the Apple Remote application, which is going to be critical for Apple TV. It hasn't been updated in almost a year.
I know.
And it turns out it's one guy who wrote it, and he's been moved to another project.
Right.
And so it's like is there a shortage of engineering talent in the world? It must be that.
No, I would say two things to that. One is Steve Jobs said explicitly, you know, we run Apple like the biggest startup in the world. And there's no doubt that that's true.
Right.
And it's also very clear that because of it's kind of like a secrecy-based product development mantra thing. You know, I honestly believe that they have very small teams there and that they're isolated from other people, not allowed to talk to the people what they're working on. And that really is how they do things. That however X number of employees they really have, if you were to look at the number of people in the iTunes team, I bet you could count them on both of your hands. I bet there aren't that many people.
Is there anything that you use or could use instead of iTunes? People in the chat room are saying Media Monkey, and I've recommended that, and I love Media Monkey.
So this is what so this is what I mean by this. It's hard to say, yeah, here's this one thing that just does everything iTunes does perfectly.
Right.
The problem is once you get on, if you were going to use an Apple device, the answer is no. You have to use iTunes. You just have to. You could use iTunes with something else. You know, for example, Zune is very smart about doing some things that iTunes is very dumb about doing. So if you manage your media collection in iTunes because you want to sync stuff to a device, you can still use Zune, and it will still pick up all that music that's in your iTunes collection, and you can use Zune for other things. So from a PC media player / manager, Zune is the most obvious alternative, right? It has a marketplace, it has apps, you know, and devices, and it does streaming over networks, and you can share stuff out to your Xbox 360 and instead of an Apple TV or whatever. So Zune is the closest. But there are other things that I think, my software pick of the week this week is based around this notion. You know, Apple, one of the reasons I ultimately kind of fell down a little harder than the Zune last year was there are certain things that the Zune platform doesn't support that the Apple platform does. And one of those things is soft captioning in video. If you use a tool like Handbrake to rip DVDs, you can add captioning that you can turn on or off on the fly. And that's a huge capability for me personally because my son is deaf and he needs captioning. I don't want to have to rip 2 copies of a DVD, one that has captioning, you know, hard encoded into it, and one that does not. I'd rather have one version where you can turn the captioning on or off, right? It's just common sense. So you can do that with Handbrake. But if you play that thing on the Zune, if you play that thing on Windows Media Player or most other media players, you can't enable the captioning. They just don't support it, whereas Apple's iTunes and QuickTime software does. So my software pick of the week this week, not to jump the gun on it, is a solution that on a Windows machine allows you to turn soft captioning on in the same files. It's not made by Microsoft because Microsoft doesn't yet at least support that. So there is no one solution, and that's what makes this hard.
Yeah, this is absolutely Apple's game plan, is to control it from end to end.
And I'm not comfortable preaching complexity. In other words, here's what I think you should do. I think you should use the Zune software for this. But because Amazon has $1 movie purchases, when it comes to purchasing TV shows, I think you should purchase them from Amazon.
That's the funny thing, because people who listen to us in this show are, I would say, mostly tend toward this side of the spectrum where they like having 15 different buttons to press to do one thing.
Right.
But the problem is most people want one button.
Right.
Geeks like, oh, I like all the features and the fiddly bits.
Yeah.
I want to fiddle, but normal people do not.
Wow. I mean, yes, I agree with that. I mean, I guess I'm a geek or whatever, but I want things to be simple, and I'm not, like I said, I'm not comfortable telling people they need 30 different things.
Well, you're responsible too, even if you did like fiddly bits, which I bet you do. You're just hiding it. But,
I do like fiddly bits.
But even if you didn't, and I do this on the radio show, you always want to recommend the normal person solution as over the complex geek solution.
Whatever makes sense.
But you do have to. But I recognize that geeks, and this was something we did way back when at Tech TV. Why we did 2 different shows. We did Screensavers and Call for Help. Call for Help was for the people who wanted the right, easy, simple solution. Screensavers was enthusiasts, people who liked computers. It's sui generis for themselves and wanted to fiddle with them. They weren't looking for the easiest way to buy music. They wanted the most complicated way to buy music that would give them the 10% advantage that geeks want, right?
This is the home theater conversation we had last week.
Exactly.
Where for several years I had this honking media center PC with stupid IR blasting stuff and yada, yada, yada. And then, HD comes along and it's just awful and expensive. And, okay, you know what? Fios has HD DVR. The software's terrible, but it's built into the box. It's silent. It doesn't have to be rebooted every night. Screw it. It's just simpler. I'm not saying it's better, better or worse, whatever, but it is kind of better in a way, right? Because it's just simple and there's no heartache or difficulty to it,
He's got heartache by the numbers. Too many.
Well, listen, technology will always disappoint you. Yeah. It will always defeat you. It will always break your heart. It's the way this stuff works.
Yeah. So, hey, for our international audience, Zune Pass might be coming to you sometime soon. This is another frustration, by the way, I hear a lot, that when Apple makes an announcement, or anybody makes an announcement having to do with media generally, it's U.S. only.
Oh, and by the way, this also plays into the conversation we just had because, okay, I'm ready to announce that Zune is the only possible replacement for iTunes, and then people say, yeah, that's nice, but I live in Europe.
What about Australia?
And
exactly.
What about us? Yeah, I can't get Zune Pass, whatever. So hopefully that's changing. There have been rumors about this for many years. I talked previously about my disappointment last year when I talked to the guys at Microsoft about the Zune HD before it came out. I asked them, you're going to do this international, right? And they said, yeah, we don't want to talk about that. And I have a theory, as I did at the time, or not at the time, but as I developed over time, that the reason for that is Windows Phone's coming. And Windows Phone is going to be the way that they get the Zune services out internationally in a way that makes sense. So there have been a number of rumors or little leaks of things about Zune Pass specific.
Oh, we knew it would happen sometime. I felt like we were going really well. And there he goes. I'm wasting valuable Skype time.
We don't know when this thing's going to go down.
We don't know when it's going to blow. So let's get back to it. What were we doing?
It's like an episode of MacGruber.
MacGruber. I haven't seen that movie yet. I got to get that on my Netflix. What were we doing when we got cut off?
Zune International.
Oh, yes. Let's start from that point.
Okay. I don't remember where I was.
No, forget it. I'll just start over. It's time for Windows Week. No. I'll start with I'll start with that point.
I think we were mostly through it.
So now that the international Zune store
hopefully will open.
Hopefully will open. I know what you were going to say. You were saying is that Windows Phone 7 is going to be kind of a stealth entry of the Zune store into these international markets.
Yeah, I think when people think Zune, they think of the device, if they even know what it is, and then they think, oh wow, that thing was such a huge failure. But the Zune is becoming a platform, and it's going to show up on Windows Phone. It was on the Kin, not that mattered apparently, but it is on the Xbox 360 and is getting better on the Xbox 360. And really, it just becomes a part of other things. And I think we've probably talked about the fact that hopefully Microsoft will create a Windows Phone without a phone, like their version of the iPod Touch that is essentially a Zune HD replacement or whatever. But whatever they do, the Zune services work on the PC, they work on devices, they work on Xbox 360. So, soon you'll have access to this stuff.
Hey, I'm really excited. By the way, I just saw the bundle price now for the the new Xbox 360 and Kinect.
Yeah, $400.
$400. I'm going to buy it. I mean,
I heard
I'm so excited.
I heard a rumor that there's going to be an Xbox 360 Windows Phone bundle.
Ooh, wait a minute. I better hold off then. That
seems a little hokey to me in a way, because obviously a phone. Yeah, how would you do that? But yeah. Supposedly, and then yeah, I guess we'll see.
That's intriguing.
Yes.
And that's the 250 gigabyte Xbox. So maybe they'll do, the Xbox Arcade Connect bundle as well. So there might be a cheaper way to do it.
By the way, one of the questions I get a lot from people is, will Microsoft ever back down and release a version of the Xbox 360 that has Blu-ray, right? Because they did the HD DVD thing for a little while as an add-on. They were never going to replace the DVD player with an HD DVD, but one of the issues with the DVD player that is in the Xbox is that there's a storage ceiling, right? And as these games get bigger and bigger, what are you going to do? I mean, how do you overcome that? Maybe they'll go Blu-ray, but they will never do that because, A, they would have to ship a separate add-on for people. No game maker would ever target Blu-ray for their games because that would only hit a very small percentage of the market. And the 250 gigabyte hard drive you're referring to speaks to Microsoft's real plan for this, which is they expect people to install bigger games onto the hard drive. So you could have multiple DVDs in the box.
Yep. And downloads, right?
And downloads too, yeah, same thing. So they're never going to go Blu-ray, and that's why the storage on the device is getting so big that you can just install anything on there, and that's how they're going to handle that.
I think physical media even Blu-rays kind of passé now, don't you think?
Yeah, I do. For true HD aficionados, Blu-ray is as good as it gets, but as we might have discussed, some of the instant-on HD streaming, 1080p HD streaming that you get on the Xbox 360, for example, is astonishingly good. It's really good. Not that paying, for a movie that way is necessarily the way to go, but it is amazing the quality you can get on a streaming connection now. So, yeah.
So you don't mind 720p? You can live with that.
What do you mean?
Well, that's what the streaming resolution is. Nobody's doing 10, and that's the only reason you'd want 1080p is Blu-ray. The only reason you want Blu-ray is
no. Xbox 360 does do 1080p.
It does streaming. Wow.
Yeah. Actually, the way it works is pretty cool. So if you buy a Zune movie in HD, a 1080p movie, you can do what they call instant-on streaming. So it will stream. It takes about 10, 12 seconds, depending on your connection. But for the first couple of seconds, it's an SD resolution, and then it kind of goes up to 720p, and then it hits 1080p. And there's actually a gauge at the bottom of the screen that will show you how it's doing. And once it hits 1080p, you get the little flash, and then it goes away. But yeah, they do instant-on streaming, and it is 1080p.
Is it a really low bit rate 1080p?
I'm not actually positive, but that's what I was referring to. It's actually surprisingly decent looking.
Interesting.
It does 5.1 and all that. It's nice.
See, man, I'm definitely going to have to, now that they're quiet, I'm going to have to put an Xbox 360 with Kinect on my 60-incher.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That'll be fun.
Yep. And plus the Call of Duty benefits.
My prestige goes to 11.
Actually, prestige does go to 11. It's kind of strange.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
We're going to take a break, come back with more. Paul Thurrott is here of the great SuperSite for Windows, winsupersite.com. We're talking about all things Microsoft coming up, our Windows 7 feature and tip of the week, software of the week. I'd love to ask you about Mark Hurd, the big lawsuit. And Microsoft shuts down a major botnet.
No, they're okay with brothels.
Brothels are fine. It's the botnets we hate. All right, we'll talk about that in just a second. But let me talk right now about GoToMeeting. You know, from time to time, I'll acknowledge face-to-face meetings are important. How many times have we met in person, Paul? Maybe 2 or 3 times.
Yep.
And I guess I'll see you again in January at CES. But
if not sooner.
If not sooner. But most of the time, I don't need to press the flesh. The fact that I can use the intranet and meet with Paul over the bits is sufficient. And that's
just like the high quality we received today.
Yes. See, if we were using GoToMeeting, we wouldn't be having these problems. GoToMeeting gets more done, travels less. It's the online meeting solution. So, yeah, you could do conference calls. You could do Skype calls. But sometimes you want to show what's on your computer screen, the PowerPoint presentations, the spreadsheets. That's when GoToMeeting just is so great for product reviews, for sales, training, collaboration. Now, you might say, wait a minute, sales, no, I can't use it because I don't want my client to have to jump through hoops to meet with me. No, that's the beauty of GoToMeeting. That's why it's so much better than any other solution. There's never any configuration issue, never firewall problems, none of that stuff which you have frequently with the other solutions. All you got to do is you can set your meeting up ahead of time by sending him an invitation. He clicks the link. It takes 30 seconds to get the software from GoToMeeting, and now he's seeing, I mean, it's like really simple, no fiddly bits. You can even, so simple, you can even do it while you're on the phone with your client, saying, you know, I've got a great presentation. I'd like to show you what our company can do for you. Click this link, and you say, literally, it's just easy. You say, gotomeeting.com. Say they go there. And you see on the left, join a meeting. Click that. Now, here's the meeting ID. You give them that number, and now they're literally 30 seconds later seeing your presentation. All from your desk. It is so great. I want you to try it free for 30 days. Go to the website to get it. You'll see how fast it is. GoToMeeting.com/Windows Weekly. GoToMeeting.com/Windows Weekly. That's 30 days of unlimited meetings, as long as you want, as often as you want. And that's the other thing, by the way. GoToMeeting, you get a month pass. I think it's $49, and that's it. You don't have to count the meeting lengths, count the number of meetings. You don't have to think about it, so you use it more. It really is a great way to make your business more effective. From the good folks at Citrix, so you know it's made in Germany, so you know it's good stuff. No, it's not. Citrix is a U.S. company. GoToMeeting.com/Windows Weekly. Try it today and tell them Leo sent you. They're not going to ask, but if they do, and when they say Leo who, just, it's okay. I'm not hurt. So, what's this botnet deal? What's happened here?
So, last year there was a botnet made up of hundreds of different domains that was sending out, it was creating zombie PCs.
It's used for spamming and stuff.
Yeah, spamming and malware distribution.
Right.
It was called Waladak or Whaledak or however you say that. This thing was delivering almost 2 million spam messages every single day.
Oh, jeez.
So it's actually kind of a funny story if you can overlook the,
horror.
The whole electronic disaster part of it. But Microsoft was able to shut this thing down in February using a temporary injunction. And I guess one of the issues is that obviously these domains are US-based domains, so they're owned by somebody.
Yeah, you have to go to the host.
Yeah, I mean, these people have some rights, I guess. So anyway, they were able to disrupt traffic to 276 domains that were being used for this purpose. But what happened this week was that they finally received an injunction. So now they actually own the domains. And I think this is very unusual because generally speaking, under U.S. law, like the people who own the domain have to be able to show up in court and say, oh, no, you can't take those. Those are ours. And of course, those people aren't going to do this because they're using these domains for criminal activity. Right. So what Microsoft was able to do in the court was say, look, this is what's going to happen. They're not going to show up. They live in China. They're operating under aliases and so forth. These people have spent the year trying to attack electronically the people that Microsoft is using for legal console and other things. There's some crazy stuff going on. But the courts agreed with Microsoft. They said, yeah, you can have them. Now, I guess there's a 2-week period where the owner of the domain can contest this. So I guess we'll wait and see what happens there.
Oh, so it hasn't been turned off. They're still fighting.
Oh, no, they've been turned off. They are turned off.
Oh, okay.
Well, what happens, though, is in the intervening months, Microsoft is, of course, monitoring these domains to see what the activity's like. And there are actually almost 60,000 PCs still out there now trying to hit the servers to get instructions about the new malware. And yes, so Microsoft's free security solution, Security Essentials, actually detects this and removes it. So, that's one of the things. But they've been working with, the Verizons and other broadband providers of the world to get in touch with the actual customers because they can find out, they have the IP addresses, so they know who they are. And they've actually been spending these many months trying to get in touch with these people to say, hey, by the way, your PC is a zombie.
Right.
And, I think it was just, let me see if I can find this. Yeah, last month, as of last month, there were almost 60,000 PCs still trying to connect to this botnet. They made almost 15 million connection attempts in a month.
Wow. They just hammer it. Of course,
just waiting, pleading, give us something to do.
What is thy command, my master? Don't leave me.
What do you need?
What do you need? What do you need? As bad as that sounds, that's a small botnet.
Yeah.
Many of them are
the big ones, but there are.
There are hundreds and hundreds of thousands botnets with. I've seen botnets in action. Usually, it's an IRC server, and I've seen people check into the room, or bots check into the room, saying, "I'm here, I'm here." Many, many, many hundreds a second, just boom, 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 boom. And the FBI knows they're there. Microsoft, people know they're there, and you got to go through this court process to shut them down. And if they're not in the U.S., forget it.
If they're not in the U.S., you're screwed. But I guess for the U.S. ones, now that they've established this precedent, they're going to use this now, but I think it's going to happen a little more quickly.
All it means is they go to Trinidad and Tobago. And,
Russia, China, whatever.
There's all these places they can go where nobody's going to do anything. The Canary Islands, whatever.
Yep.
Oh, Jimmy's telling me, I guess Jimmy's a hacker. Oh, Leo, IRC botnets are so early 2000. No one uses that anymore. I'm sorry, I'm not elite. Like some of you. What do they use? They must have some other control system. So Mark Hurd gets fired from HP for jimmying the expense accounts. Kind of a minor reason. Larry Ellison at the time says it's the stupidest HR decision he's ever heard of. Larry then last week turns around and hires Mark Hurd as one of the presidents in the suite. I think there's 3 or 4.
Yeah, co-president.
Co-presidents. He put his money where his mouth is. He says Mark Hurd's great. Now, I have to point out that the guy Mark Hurd is replacing is the guy whose mistress put up billboards on Highway 101 announcing that he had broken up with her. So,
well,
apparently remember, Oracle doesn't care about this stuff much.
I was going to say, it's important to point out that Oracle and HP are incredibly different companies.
And that's, I think, what Larry Ellison was saying is they're letting their prudish morals influence their business. And that's, that's bad. The
behavior at HP that was so horrible that he was essentially fired over is a non-event, in a lot of other places, including apparently Oracle. So, of course, now I didn't know this until this happened, but apparently in the state of California, they do not have laws about anti-competitive laws. Like if you
they do. So you could put a non-compete. I know this because I've had non-competes in contracts, and my lawyer has said, let them put it in. It's non-competes are, the quote is, unenforceable in California.
Right.
However, I think you can make an employment agreement that says you can't say you can't take a job at Oracle, but they must have some protection for all of the, and this is what came up immediately. Well, Mark Hurd knows a lot about our business, and he's going. Right. Now, is Oracle really a competitor to HP? Don't HP's consultants sell Oracle into...
well, this is the thing. So this market is consolidating all of a sudden. Oracle in the past year has purchased Sun Microsystems. HP is, I'm going to screw this up, but I think it was EDS that they purchased. And these guys are starting to overlap. Oracle is turning into more of, Oracle has always been a database company, essentially. But they're broadening their
becoming a
horizons.
consultancy, which is a big part of HP's business.
Right, and they're also selling servers now, and
they are. They sell hardware.
Sun Microsystems makes.
Oh, they own Sun, of course. What am I saying?
Yeah.
Stupid, of course.
So there's more of a direct competition going on there. I mean, HP and Oracle are also partners, but this is the way the industry's going. So I think that HP does have a case to make that Mark Hurd has very specific knowledge about HP trade secrets, and that information could be used at Oracle to hurt HP and so forth. But I think it's kind of a tough case because, as you said, these anti-competitive...
they put them in contracts, but doesn't mean you can enforce them.
Yeah, they're not enforceable.
And it might be why Mark Hurd took a job at a California company and not, say, a Texas company.
Yeah,
Right?
that could be too.
Yeah.
I don't understand why this guy's working though, because he walked away. No, I mean, think about this.
What, 20 million he got something?
He got between 35 and 40 million, depending on how you add it up. I mean, how much money do you? I mean, I get that we all have to, we have to be busy and all that, but seriously, I think at that point that would be my walk away moment. I think
I'd be in Trinidad and Tobago running a botnet right now.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I just don't understand why he needs to work. Although
he must like the work.
Yeah, and there's some speculation that he may be being groomed now to replace Larry Ellison at some point as well.
It's I would absolutely guess that's what's going on. I mean, they got rid of, was it Robinson? They got rid of one guy to bring him into the president's suite. I would say absolutely. Larry's saying, look, this, and Larry's not wrong. I mean, you said this. The Mark Hurd's been good for HP, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, he's a good CEO.
Right. So, yeah, there's been some speculation, and I guess I kind of agree with this, that the most likely outcome here is that there'll be some form of settlement, and that HP will be paid some amount, and maybe his the direct product lines that he oversees for some point of time will not be direct competitors to HP or whatever. But I think Mark Hurd's going to end up at Oracle. Oracle loves this guys. They live for this. I almost
love
think
it. Oh, it's good PR.
I think that they might have hired him just to be in the news,
just to tweak HP. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you remember this happened before with, was it Mark Papermaster that was at IBM? He went to Apple to run the iPhone division. IBM sued, saying, you can't do it, lost. I don't know if there was a settlement, but Apple got him, and then ironically, a year later, AntennaGate, and he's out of work.
Well, or the Google engineer or the Microsoft engineer who started up the Microsoft search efforts in China, after getting it all up and running, bolted and went to Google in China.
Right.
Kai Lee, his last name was Lee. I don't remember his full name. Cachefly or something. And he only lasted at Google. So there was a big battle, a big legal battle. He couldn't do something directly related to the job for a certain period of time. He got back on board, and I don't think he lasted 2 years at Google. I think he was gone pretty quickly, actually.
Yeah. Sometimes you go after. You're not thinking of Chi Lu, are you? He's the guy who's now at Microsoft. I met him, by the way, at Food Camp. It was so cool to meet him. He was at Yahoo and left Yahoo in their search division to go to Bing. He's the guy behind Bing. Brilliant guy.
No. This was a guy who was heading up Microsoft's search research center in China, and then he bolted for Google, but also for China to do the same thing, essentially.
Yeah. I was. Chi listens to our show. Hi, Chi. Chi Xianzhang, I should say, and really cool fella. Anyway, moving right along.
Yes,
you're continuing your expose, your volume, your tome on the digital media core. Is that still in process?
Yeah, I mean, I actually started it originally 3 years ago, and then I kind of let it sit there, and now I'm redoing it. I'm updating it. I'm updating the ones that are there, and then I'm going to start the new one. So 3 years ago, and I was amazed it was that long ago. I went and looked, and 3 years ago, tentatively, and you got to remember this was, Windows Vista was out. It was kind of a different world, but it seemed to me that H.264 was going to evolve into the obvious choice. At the time, it wasn't obvious, and I talked about various alternatives like Windows Media Video and VC1 and XVID and DivX and so forth. But if you now flash forward 3 years, and some important things have happened, especially on the Windows side, which is that now H.264 is natively supported in Windows 7, for example. That changes everything.
Huge.
Yeah, so you could play H.264 files with Windows Media Player and Windows Media Center. That makes all the difference in the world. So any qualms I might have had 3 years ago about H.264 have been erased. And of course, the capabilities in H.264 have gotten all the better, including some of the soft captioning stuff we were talking about earlier. So, yeah, I would say if you have digital video that needs to happen, whether it's home movies you're converting digitally, or if you have DVDs you want to rip so that you can use them on, or play those movies on portable devices, or stream them over your network to your Xbox 360 or Apple TV or PlayStation 3, whatever you're using, I think H.264 is it. So that's my advice going forward, if you will, for video. I think that H.264 is the clear winner right now.
Yeah, I'd agree with you, although it's a moving target, as you can see. I mean, you were prescient 3 years ago to say so, but I don't see any competitor, but It does change. You're looking for the one true format.
Right. In other words, I want to be able to say unequivocally that this is it. You know,
just as MP3 is the one true format for music.
Yeah, although I'm leaning toward AAC right now, although it's not universal, which makes it hard to recommend. I think MP3 obviously is the one true format, but I think for some of the more technical people, especially a little more forward leaning, I think AAC has got it locked down. But I have the one bit of feedback I've gotten on the video end has been around this Google format. That's coming down the pike. It's sort of a free version of MPEG-4. It's VP8, I think, is the name of it.
Yep.
So the reason that is not even mentioned in there is that that's still kind of emerging. The quality is low compared to H.264, and there are zero tools to support it. You couldn't go into Handbrake today and rip a movie to VP8 format or whatever it's called, and then play that movie on anything. So it's cute that it's out there. It's cute that it's free, essentially. It's, I get it, but it's just, it's like the people who argue for Og Vobis or something, Yes, I understand why you like it, but no, this is not something I could recommend to anybody. It's just not there.
And then there's a whole group of people who don't believe lossy compression should be used at all, and they want to use FLAC. But you're
there are people who copy the video TS file to their hard drive, and they'll have this full copy of the DVD. Okay, this is for normal people, Right.
That's that Fiddly bit thing again. There's geeks, and then there's everybody else.
Yeah, and that stuff is just unfortunately, for good or bad, it's just not universally accessible. It's not something you can easily or at all copy to a portable device of any kind to play or stream over a network easily or whatever. There are many issues with doing things in other ways. So I think video, if anything, right now is very clear. Whereas, as you noted with audio, all of a sudden not so clear. But yeah.
So let us. Do you want to do the Q&A from the chat room?
I've been meaning to do this every week, and it's just an example of the limitations of my brain that I keep forgetting to do this.
Well, let's do it. So
yeah, we should do this.
I'm gonna show the chat room. You can't see it, so I'll read the questions to you. But are you giving the chat room a chance? By the way, if you're listening live, irc.twit.tv, you can go there. And if the chat room has a question for Paul, do you want to constrain it in any way?
Nope.
Anything you want to know, where he gets his haircut, where he gets his shirts, or not. Anything you want to know, we'd love to address.
Yeah, sometimes there's this stuff going on this week. Maybe we didn't cover for whatever reason. That they're
Comp Mike wants to know if you know whether Microsoft will continue to sell or update the Zune to compete with the iPod Touch. In other words, is Zune hardware frozen now that Windows Mobile 7 is out or coming out?
Yeah, I don't know. And what I hope they do is release a version of the Zune hardware, a Zune device that's based on that Windows Phone reference platform minus the phone features. That's what I hope. And they could call it whatever, Zune HD2. The one thing I do know is this. If you look at a Zune HD and you compare it to that reference platform that is Windows Phone, the Zune HD is woefully inadequate. The processor runs at half the clock speed. The video chip is not as sophisticated. The memory is not as much, and so forth. The application platform is completely different. There's no way that anyone as a third party is ever going to support the Zune HD in the ways that they will support Windows Phone. So what I would like to see, and I literally have no knowledge about this.
So when Apple called us a couple weeks ago,
I'm sorry, ignore that. Somebody keeps wanting me to talk about Bing on Safari, which is news from June. I'm not sure why he's so hot on that. So.
Okay, so
stop asking me about it. Go away.
I would like to see them make a new version of the Zune that was based on Windows Phone, but I don't know anything about it.
You don't necessarily know. What's the latest on Veil? Somebody wants to know. Is there an update on that? This is Web 3855 is asking that.
Yeah, I have actually personally completely switched over to Veil. So as we've discussed many times previously, I've been using these HP MediaSmart servers, which have always worked very well for me. But now moving forward into Veil, I've purchased a new PC tower specifically for Veil. I've installed the version that's available. I've moved all of my content over. It's got about 8 terabytes of storage on there, roughly speaking. And now on this trip for the first time, I've had that opportunity to access the content that's on the server remotely, and that's all working fine and everything, so that's important. The big news for Vail and for Aurora, which is that small business server version coming forward, coming at the same time, is going to be these add-ons.
Right. We talked about that
add-on
last week. Or
yeah, and I had a conversation with Microsoft last week about this, and hopefully sometime in the next 30, 60 days, we'll get a feeling for some of the stuff that's going to be out there. But for example, one of the things you might see, one of the reasons I hate, iTunes 10, they being Apple, they broke compatibility with a lot of these third-party streaming tools, things that could connect to iTunes over non-Apple devices and software and so forth. So for example, HP developed something they called an iTunes server, and it was a way for your media collection on the server to look like an iTunes box, so that you could stream content from it to other instances of iTunes on your home network. So that doesn't work anymore. But I think what you're going to see on Vail, and I guess on Aurora as well, would be add-ons that will work with the latest version of iTunes and function as an iTunes server and that kind of stuff. So I think the real excitement for Vail going forward, because the basic functionality there is very similar. It's just what Windows Home Server has been, since its inception. I think the real interesting part of Vail and Aurora is going to be this add-on market and what happens there. So we'll have to wait and see. What I was basically told was that stuff's coming down the road. There's a lot of it coming. I think it's going to surprise people, and there's going to be a very healthy market for add-ons. And I think that's where that stuff's going to be. I think that's going to be the interesting part of Vail.
Did you see this? From Pocket Lint? You may actually know this information, and you may not. You may wish to recuse yourself on it. But according to Pocket Lint, they say they were told the launch date by multiple sources that Windows Phone 7 will ship October 11th. If you would like to confirm or deny, Mr. Thurrott.
I can neither confirm nor deny, but I will say this. Many, many months ago, when I was working on the schedule for the book, and I was talking to Microsoft and saying, look, I need some guidance here because the publishing company wants this thing done by a certain time period, and I'd like it to, be a little later than that. And if you could tell me when this thing was going to ship, that would be very helpful to me. What I was told was mid-October. And so we planned the schedule for the book. So, so that this thing being the book, sorry, would ship in time for the launch. And so we've always planned that. It's still the case right now. People have written me on email, and they said, hey, I see your book is on Amazon now, and it says November 18th or November 8th. Right. I don't remember. So is that when it's really coming out? And the answer is no. That's a placeholder date. If you look at any of the Windows Phone books on Amazon, they all have placeholder dates. Most of them are the same date. And my expectation is that the book will be out a month before that, and that Windows Phone will launch a month before that. So November 11th sounds plausible to me, I guess.
Plausible.
Yeah.
Also, and this is, again, coming from me, hope you don't mind, I'm going to get some more chat room questions, but news came out this morning that Apple had changed its restrictions, allowing developers to use Flash and Silverlight now to develop for the iPhone, for iOS 4. That's a big deal.
It's a huge deal. And this is an interesting coincidence for me and for the company I work for, because we're launching a mobile developer show. We do these trade shows, the Connection shows and some other shows, and they want to do I'm not involved with this personally, but the company I work for wants to do a mobile developer show, and they've asked me for feedback on some stuff. And one of the things they've been looking for is, how do you attract developers who target different platforms, right? If you look kind of, we come at things from a Microsoft standpoint sometimes, although we really want to expand beyond the Microsoft stuff, especially in the mobile space, because when you look at the mobile space, it's a lot of non-Microsoft stuff. Right. So how do you attract developers who are on Apple with iOS? How do you attract developers who are on Android? And how do you attract developers who might be going to Windows Phone going forward? And how do you do something that's valuable to all of these people at the same time? And my response to that is you don't, mostly because of Apple right now, and this was before this announcement, it's not possible to easily create an application that runs on all three of those platforms. I think Apple's announcement will ease that somewhat, right? That they are now making it somewhat easier for a developer to write applications that will run on multiple mobile platforms. I think that looking forward, for the foreseeable future, developers are still going to have a primary platform because you can't, the environments are different, the APIs are different, the underlying languages are different, the devices themselves are different. These things are so different, even though they appear to be very similar. You know, from a developmental standpoint, they're very, very, very different. So I think these intermediate tools, like the ones that Adobe wants to make, are going to be very important in the future, but I think we're also at a very early stage. So this is a nice step, and it was actually pretty unexpected.
Yeah, no kidding. There is a gaming platform called Unity that really is the biggest beneficiary of this. A lot of games are written in Unity, and we're not, according to the terms of service for developers, could not be put in the store, and now can. And I should say, just in case there's some confusion, this is not Flash and Silverlight on the iPhone. As you said, these are intermediate tools that let you use Flash or Silverlight to develop an app.
Yeah, it's what Brew was supposed to be, I guess. And the problem with for Java, you know, the problem with Java, right, in general, when you look at Java 10 years ago, when they were trying to position it as a way to write applications that can run on desktops, whether they're Linux, Unix, Mac OS 10, Windows, is that you create this least common denominator type of thing, and you're basically creating middling or terrible apps that run on everything, right? Rather than great apps that only run on some things. And obviously, Apple's stated fear, which is, you know, partially real, certainly, is that that's what these tools will do. So it's tough because the underlying APIs and frameworks and all that are still evolving very rapidly. You know, you've seen how iOS has evolved very rapidly. Android has evolved very rapidly. Hopefully, Windows Phone will as well. Well, that makes it hard to create a tool that will create apps that run on all three and not be stupid, you know? I mean, you know, not be very basic apps. So, yeah, we'll see how that goes.
And one last question from Brian Monroe in our chat room. He wants to know if Windows Phone 7 will run Flash.
Yes, but not out of the box. So Adobe is actively developing Flash for Windows 7. It's not going to be there when the device, you know, when the first devices ship. But Microsoft is not going to prevent Adobe from doing that.
I have to say, Flash on Android is far from ideal. It's not smooth.
Flash is far from ideal on any platform.
Yeah, so, you need a lot of hardware. I mean, it's not an easy thing to do.
I think the world is moving away from that kind of stuff. I honestly, and this is sort of tangential to these last two questions, I think the future, at least in the short term, of compatibility between different mobile platforms is actually going to be HTML5. Yeah. I think that creating mobile web applications that are actually pretty powerful, that run on all those platforms, that's pretty exciting, and I think is doable. You know, I think it's plausible.
And as we're learning of a zero-day exploit on Adobe platforms on Reader, and I'm not sure on Flash, but on Reader and Acrobat, I'm thinking that was today. Maybe I don't mind that so much.
No one is gonna lament Flash's passing.
No.
It's like Microsoft, Clippy, or, you know, who cares? Just
that was one of the questions I decided not to ask you, which is, do you know Bob?
Bob?
Microsoft Bob?
No.
You ever met him?
Met him? What do you mean?
I'm just kidding.
The little cartoon character.
Yeah, the little guy. The guy. Anyway,
I thought Bob was actually very forward-leaning from Microsoft at that time, and
the market just wasn't ready for Bob.
No, but if you think about what they were really trying to accomplish in that very nascent way at the time, they were talking about natural user interfaces, right?
It's ironic because we still don't have natural user interfaces for some reason.
We still don't.
Yeah. Windows 7, let's move on to the Windows 7 feature of the week. You still have some, and here it is.
I'm going to blow through these pretty quickly again because I'm just afraid we're going to lose each other. And
yeah, why not? I'd hate to lose you, Paul, now that I've found you.
And of course, I will be writing up articles as I do every week, so you know you should just check those out. So the feature of the week is called View Available Networks, and this is that jump list looking pop-up that comes up over the network connectoid in the notification area in Windows 7 that allows you to find Wi-Fi networks, but also mobile broadband networks, you know, VPN connections, dial-up connections, etc. So it's actually a neat little UI, and if you've been following along in Windows in the way that it has interacted with wireless networks. It's really gotten pretty sophisticated and is much nicer than it used to be. So Windows 7 kind of represents the the logical extension of the work that they've been doing since probably XP or XP, SP2 certainly. So it's just a nicer way of doing things or whatever. So I'll write up an article about that on the SuperSite. And then the Windows 7 tip of the week. I'm going to expand this one out because we've done a little bit about different keyboard shortcuts. There's some awesome keyboard shortcuts in Windows. Windows key plus P for the projector type stuff, and Windows key plus M for actually for something else. I just killed my computer.
It does something. We don't know what.
Don't do that. Don't do it.
That could be dangerous.
I actually, Stephen Lambie sent me an email that included a keyboard shortcut I had never, ever heard of. And it works, although you have to have a full keyboard. I can't get this to work on my laptop keyboard. It actually requires a numeric keyboard. And it's very specific, so I'm gonna build this out into include other keyboard shortcuts. But I wanted to at least provide this one on the podcast because literally this was brand new to me, and I thought this was actually kind of interesting. If you have an Explorer window open in Details view, you may be familiar with the notion that it has these columns, right, that represent different attributes of the files that you're looking at, and one of the weird things about Details View is that it doesn't auto-size the columns by default, so that different columns could be cut off. So the file names might be cut off. There's a column called Type that will say Microsoft Word document, but as I'm looking at my documents library right now, it says Microsoft Word D ... that kind of thing. So if you have a numeric keyboard and you're viewing this display, a Windows Explorer window with Details View on, you can tap Control plus the plus sign on the numeric keypad, and it will actually automatically resize all of the columns so that they're the exact right length to fit all of the content that it's displaying, if that makes sense.
I like that.
Yeah, it's actually pretty sweet. And again, I tried this before I went on the trip, and it does work. I can't get it to work here on this laptop keyboard, unfortunately, but that's kind of a neat one. So I'll provide a few more. I think we've done, at least 2 tips that revolved around keyboard shortcuts of some kind. So I'll expand that out with the third one for this weekend. That will include that tip and some other kind of cool Windows 7 keyboard shortcuts.
Excellent. And now we have 2, not 1, but 2 software picks of the week.
Yeah, and one is a traditional software, Windows software, and we've actually recommended this one at some point in the distant past, but I wanted to mention it again because looking at iTunes alternative specifically, this is a third-party media player called Vlc Media Player that is free.
Everybody should have this on every computer.
Yeah, it's lightweight and all that stuff, which I really like, and it supports soft captioning, which is awesome for me.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's neat.
Yeah, so Windows Media Player does not, Zune does not, but VLC does, and I've been actually just playing around with that on this trip, and it works great. So videoland.org/VLC is the place to go for that. Sort of an alternative to QuickTime Player, I guess would be the way I'd describe it, or a Windows Media Player if you use that for.
And if you have an older version of Windows that doesn't have DVD support, this just works. It just adds DVD support for free, which is nice.
Yep.
I don't know how they do that. Maybe because they're French.
Right.
Or maybe they pay. Maybe they pay the license fee. I don't know. It also plays.
Yeah, that seems unlikely.
It plays real media. So if you go to a site, this happens to me all the time, where they have Reel on it still, and you say, "Oh, please don't make me download Reel Player." VLC will play it.
Right.
Love that.
Yeah, it's a nice little player.
Yep.
The other one just came in via email from Sean Kirshner. It's not software per se. It's actually a website, but it's howsecureismypassword.net.
Huh.
Now,
I don't even want to know.
You want to?
I don't want to know.
I actually have what I thought was a very secure password. Now, there's a lot of text on here about is this safe? Is it accurate? And so forth. I think you should take a look at that. The thing I decided to do was when I typed in my own password, I type in for my logon. It's the password I use to log on to my PC, and the password I use to connect to my home server. So I didn't want to type in my actual password, but I do have a combination of letters and numbers and special characters. And so what I did was I put them all in the same order, but I used different letters, numbers, and special characters because I wanted to see roughly how accurate is my password, right? And it's funny because as you type, it will change. So, I've typed in, it looks like 8 characters, and it's like, this would take about 2 hours to crack, But when I actually type in the password that I use, or a rough version of it, it says it would take about 1 billion years.
Oh, that's good.
To crack that, which is fantastic, because the reason I have this password literally is because of home server. And in the initial version of home server, by default, it has a strict password requirement if you're going to access the server remotely. So I created at that time a complex password, which I've since memorized and used to log on to all my to my PCs. And I kind of was going with Windows Home Server told me this was a complex password. It seems like a complex password. And I'm actually sort of happy to see that. But it's funny, you can experiment with it. So if you type in something like ABC123, for example, it will say, you have typed in one of the 500 most common passwords. This would be cracked almost instantly.
Wow. Wow.
You can add characters to it, and you can see the difference. Add a special character, it goes up to about 18 hours. Add a couple more letters and numbers, 5 years, 607,000 years.
That's 20, a good one.
Yeah. So you can experiment with your passwords and get a rough idea, I guess, for how
that's good.
How secure. Yeah.
I'm pleased to say that my low security password that I use on sites like the New York Times is 13 minutes, but my high security password, which is easy for me to remember because it's a song lyric. And I just do the first letters of the first whatever is, I think it's 10 letters of the song lyric. It would take several thousand years. So that's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
And, on a related note, now that I'm thinking of it, there was actually an article, I think in the New York Times this week, about how, it might have been in the Sunday New York Times, about how Microsoft and some other companies have done some research into passwords. Did you read that?
Yeah.
And one of the things they noted was, the biggest e-commerce sites in the world, like Amazon, do not have complex password requirements, and there are no stories about people being hacked on these on these sites. And so why is that? And what they've discovered is that creating a complex password isn't necessarily required. Which I thought was kind of interesting. But
yeah. And Microsoft's done research in the past that says one of the problems with a hard to remember password is people tend to write them on sticky notes and put it on their monitor, which makes it far worse than a simple, easy to remember password.
Yeah, the hard thing, of course, is you have multiple accounts in multiple places online, and I think a lot of people probably use the same password everywhere. Right. And you don't want to get into a situation where your account does get hacked somewhere, and then they can potentially go and look at other services and break into your accounts there as well.
Right. Well, we've recommended in the past LastPass. And,
LastPass, yeah, which is fantastic.
To me, that's the solution all around.
Yep.
To everything, including Post-it notes on the monitor.
it's the solution to personal problems and to loneliness.
If Windows is the problem, Paul Thurrott is the cure. He is at the SuperSite for Windows, winsupersite.com. His news reports are on Windows IT Pro, and his books are on the bookshelves of every major supplier in the world. All you have to do is look for Windows X secrets, Windows Vista secrets, Windows 7 secrets, soon Windows Phone secrets.
Yep. Well, those brick and mortar stores are still in business.
They're still around.
God love them.
God love them. Paul, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here. You can watch us do this show. Normally we do it Thursdays at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1800 UTC. Next week we'll be half an hour late. We'll be at 11:30 Pacific, 2:30 Eastern, 18.
Yeah, hopefully we'll have a special guest.
And we may have a special guest. That's exciting. You want to tease that or just?
Windows Phone related, I guess.
Oh, that's good. Even better. Good tease. Good tease. Good tease, my man.
Sorry about the connectivity problems today.
No, you know what? No one who's watching after the fact knows.
Okay.
You know why? Because we edited them all out.
Alrighty.
While you're in Fort Collins, Infoichi says, try out the New Belgium Brewing House.
I've already been there.
Been there, done that.
In fact, it is the reason I have, to this minute, a throbbing, unbelievable headache. It's like beer plus altitude plus dryness.
Oh, not a good combination.
Equals, boredom. Yeah.
Paul, great to talk to you. We will see you next time on Windows Weekly.
Thank you, sir.
Safe travels home. It's stainless steel. It's 7 quarts, and it has an easy sear insert. Because frequently when you're making like a pot roast, you brown it, you sear it, and then, Paul, are you enjoying this?
I'll be right back.
Go ahead, take your time.